A motorcycle dealership owner goes undercover as a broke customer to investigate a dip in sales. But when he overhears two strangers whispering about off-the-books deals and stolen bikes, his world turns upside down. Employees he trusted are part of a secret black market ring, and tonight they're planning to vanish with millions in inventory. What they don't know? The man they think is just another customer owns the place. And he's about to burn it all down to save what he built. Blake Marston zipped up his weathered leather jacket, the same one he used to wear back when he fixed bikes with his own hands in a crammed garage behind his parents' farmhouse. Now, the same hands signed million-dollar vendor contracts, managed a regional empire of luxury motorcycle dealerships, and barely touched a wrench. But something was off at Apex Cycles, and he wasn't about to ignore it. Customer feedback was slipping. Trust was eroding. And worse? His CFO had flagged unusual inconsistencies in revenue versus unit count, brushed off by accounting as seasonal fluctuation. Blake didn't believe in coincidences. So, for the first time in 14 years, he became a stranger in his own showroom. Gone was the perfectly pressed blazer. He wore torn jeans, fake tattoos down his arms, and a backward cap that did nothing to hide the determination in his eyes. The name on his forged ID tag read Logan Briggs, a 40-something truck driver looking to finally chase the wind. He parked 2 blocks away and walked into the store like any other man in search of a thrill. The dealership had that calculated polish, glass, chrome, and soft rock humming from the speakers. Familiar. Too familiar. The staff moved like clockwork, smiling, polished. But Blake had built this from nothing. He knew real, and he knew fake. A saleswoman approached, bubbly and crisp. "Welcome to Apex Cycles. Looking for anything in particular today?" she asked. He faked a casual shrug. "Been saving up. Might go big, you know. Always wanted a street rocket." She led him to the high-end bikes, Aprilias, BMWs, a Ducati V4S that gleamed like a loaded pistol. He asked the right questions, probed casually, pretending he didn't understand half of what she said. But she wasn't pushy. She smiled, offered him a bottle of water. Professional. He noted her name tag. Nina. She wasn't in the employee files. New hire? He pretended to think hard, eventually nodding toward the Ducati. Might be crazy, but can I sit on it? Of course, she said. Just let me unlock the clamp. While she walked away, Blake mounted the bike like an old lover. Familiar, comforting, real. His fingers traced the grips, the mirrors, the paneling. He noticed minor details, the kind only someone obsessed with craftsmanship would catch. Then came the voices, behind him. 2 men, not loud, but not whispering either. "You sure Ray's not watching today?" one said. "Nah," the other replied. "He's off shift. And besides, it's not like management gives a damn. Hell, I got my R1 last month half price. Just gotta know the back route." Blake's grip tightened. His knuckles went white. "They don't even log it anymore," the first continued. Luis swaps the serial tags. "We write out like it never happened." A pause. "And if someone asks?" "Off the books. Damaged during delivery." That's the story. Ray signs off. Blake kept his head down, his blood running cold. Ray. Head of inventory. 15 years at the company. A handshake deal guy. Blake's drinking buddy. Godfather to his niece. And now, possibly the ringleader of an underground bike theft ring? The 2 men laughed again. That cocky, knowing kind of laugh. As they walked off, unaware the owner of the entire chain had just heard every word. Blake dismounted slowly, still acting, still breathing through it. Nina returned, smiling as if nothing had happened. "Thoughts?" "Gonna walk around a bit," he said. "Get a feel for the place." "Take your time," she chirped, then disappeared into the front office. But Blake didn't walk. He stalked, slow, careful steps, eyes scanning the floor, mind spinning faster than the Ducati's tachometer. His ears caught every word, every movement, every glance between employees who now felt like strangers. The shine of the dealership? It masked something rotten, and Blake Marston, founder of Apex Cycles, was about to find out how deep it went. The back corridor was dimmer, the polished perfection of the showroom fading behind Blake like a bad memory. He pretended to admire a Yamaha Tracer, crouching beside it to inspect the brakes. But really, he was watching the security door near the parts room. Luis. That was the name one of the customers had dropped. Blake remembered him vaguely. Warehouse tech, hired last year through Ray. Supposed to be night shift only. But now Blake had questions. Big ones. He rose and moved toward the far wall, where a mounted TV cycled through dealership promos. From this angle, he could see the service area through the glass divider. 3 mechanics worked on bikes, laughing among themselves. One of them, tall, goatee, oil-stained hands, kept glancing at the clock. Ray had trained that one personally. Blake's phone buzzed. A message from his assistant manager across town. Did you approve the second V4S to be marked as inventory? Damaged this week? His stomach dropped. Second! He turned off the screen. No trail. He kept walking. At the accessories section, 2 young guys were flipping through helmets. Loud, obnoxious, trying hard to look like regular customers. But Blake recognized them. Not their faces, but the behavior. Distracting. Filling. Space. They were decoys, probably used to flood the showroom whenever something shady went down. Yo, one of them said too loudly. You think that CBR1000RR is gonna be there tonight? Ray said it'd be hot by 10. His buddy smirked. If it isn't, Luis'll roll something better. That dude's got options. They laughed. Blake stepped behind a shelf of gloves and exhaled slowly. The smell of leather didn't comfort him like it used to. Every word he overheard drove a nail into the foundation he'd built over 2 decades. Hot by 10. That had to mean tonight. The theft wasn't occasional. It was scheduled. Predictable. Organized. And someone high up, possibly Ray himself, was not only orchestrating it, but supplying premium bikes through a backdoor ring while the official records were manipulated. Blake pulled out his phone again, opened the Apex system through a secure VPN, and searched for the most recent damage reports. 3 bikes in the last 2 weeks marked unrecoverable transit damage. All top-end models. All processed by Luis, approved by Ray. He wasn't angry. Not yet. He was cold. Sharp. Calculating. They were using his company, his trust, his name, to launder and flip stolen machines. It wasn't just theft. It was fraud. Wire fraud. Insurance fraud. Possibly even Ryko-level racketeering if he followed the money trail. He was about to pull up shipping manifests when Nina reappeared. Find what you were looking for? She asked innocently. Blake looked up, giving her the same half-smile he gave auditors during tough quarterly reviews. I think I did. Her eyes flickered, just for a second, something behind them shifting. He watched her posture stiffen before she quickly excused herself and returned to the sales desk. Too smooth. Glanced at the time. 6:42 p.m. The lot would empty by 9. That gave him just over 2 hours to confirm what he already suspected. This wasn't a few bad employees running a side hustle. This was a full-blown organized ring inside his dealership, with people he'd hired, trained, trusted. Blake turned toward the break room. His next step was risky but necessary. He was going to hack the internal camera feed. He still had back-end access. Ray didn't know that. No one did. If they thought he was just some tired middle-aged man looking for a thrill ride, they were dead wrong. Tonight, someone was going to slip up, and Blake would be waiting. The break room was quiet. Too quiet. Blake slipped inside like a shadow, the buzz of vending machines masking his movement. A single ceiling bulb flickered faintly, casting uneven light on the worn-out furniture. A hoodie was slung over the back of a chair, probably Luis's. There was a laptop on the table, screen dark but still warm. Blake ignored it. He moved to the utility closet. The dealership's internal server room was behind a false wall, a feature Blake had added during early expansion to prevent external breaches. Ironically, now it was his lifeline. He flipped the breaker in the corner, waited for the low click, then pushed gently. The panel shifted, revealing a slim access box tucked into the wall. Inside, 3 drives blinked lazily. All live. Blake connected his phone using the hidden port he'd personally installed. Within seconds, the internal feed loaded. Cameras positioned throughout the building, their angles crisp, every aisle, corner, and entry point accounted for. He scrubbed through the last 2 nights. There, 10:06 p.m., 2 men wheeling out a Ducati and a Yamaha, both wrapped in shipping blankets. Luis and another figure, hoodie up, face turned away, but the swagger was familiar. Ray. The timestamp matched the phony damage reports. Blake's throat tightened. He fast-forwarded to earlier that day. Ray had arrived hours before his shift, meeting with Nina behind the service bay, laughing, hands passing a brown envelope between them. Money? Documents? It didn't matter. Blake had enough. He needed only one more piece. He zoomed in on the office camera, the one that faced his own desk. Ray had been in there. That morning, Blake watched the footage in silence as Ray entered, looked around quickly, and opened the bottom drawer of Blake's locked filing cabinet with a key. His key. Blake felt his stomach drop. That drawer held limited edition titles, private deal contracts, and more importantly, an old flash drive containing Apex's client database backups. Why would Ray need that? Unless they weren't just stealing bikes anymore. They were selling client data. Contact info. High value. Profiles. People known to pay in cash. Or those with weak paperwork trails. Perfect buyers for off-the-record bikes. He stood there for a long moment, the back of his neck tight with fury. They were bleeding him from inside. Using the trust of his name to run a black market empire under his own roof. And now, customer data too? Then came the final blow. Blake was about to close the feed when something flashed in the corner of the screen. The employee lounge. Nina was there now, speaking to someone on a burner phone. The camera's mic wasn't strong, but it caught one clear sentence. Everything's packed for tonight. He won't even know it's gone until Monday. A pause. Yeah. And the old guy, some trucker type. He's been sniffing too close. Luis thinks he's a cop. She laughed, soft, dismissive. We'll be gone by the time they figure it out. Ray said he already switched out the storage logs. Blake stared at the screen, heart hammering. They weren't waiting for a slow con. They were leaving. Tonight, with stolen bikes, stolen data, and enough insurance fraud to sink the company, he had one shot, one window. He closed the panel and left. The break room, his steps faster now, headed straight for the locked storeroom by the back exit. It was supposed to hold unsold trade-ins. If what he feared was true, it was holding something else. He grabbed the spare key from behind the poster, frame, another trick no one else knew, and cracked the door open. The room reeked of rubber and oil. 5 bikes sat inside. No tags, no plates, no VIN stickers, all wrapped for transport. There were 2 duffel bags too. He unzipped the first. Cash, stacks of it. Bundled, labeled, counted. The second, documents, dealer paperwork, blank forms, stolen IDs, phony warranties. It wasn't just a bike theft ring, it was a full-blown, off-grid operation, with infrastructure. A side business running under Apex's roof. And tonight, they were planning to vanish. Blake zipped the bags shut, stepped back into the hallway, and tapped the phone in his pocket. He wasn't calling the cops. Not yet. He was calling her. Detective. Lena Ortiz, a former customer, now part of financial crimes. Someone he trusted. Because if this was going to be taken down clean, it had to be tonight, and he wanted to be the one to end it. The sun had dipped below the horizon, by the time Blake pulled into the alley across from Apex Cycles. The building glowed under its usual facade, blue LED signs, spotless glass, and bikes gleaming like trophies in the showroom. From the outside, it looked like success. Inside, it was a lie. Blake sat in a beat-up rental SUV with the engine off and his windows cracked. He wore a Bluetooth earpiece and held a second phone in his lap, screen lit with a blinking red dot. Recording live. He had a mini body cam clipped to the inside of his shirt, his voice steady, his face unreadable. He was done pretending to browse. He was here to expose. At 9:43 p.m., the service door cracked open. Luis appeared first, dragging a dolly loaded with crates. 2 were marked as damaged shipments, but Blake recognized the shapes immediately. Exhaust kits, performance mods, and a rear fairing that belonged to the V4S that had mysteriously disappeared last Thursday. Luis looked both ways, then waved. Nina emerged next, dressed in black cargo pants and a hoodie, a far cry from her bubbly, cardigan-wearing daytime persona. She carried a duffel bag and a clipboard. Behind them was Ray, still wearing his Apex jacket like a badge of loyalty, walking with the calm arrogance of someone who thought he'd already won. Blake leaned forward, whispering into the mic. There. Moving inventory. 2 crates, 2 duffels. Confirming Ray, Luis, Nina on site. Possibly prepping for exit. A voice crackled in his ear. Copy that, Mr. Marston. We're 3 minutes out. Detective Ortiz had promised discretion. No lights, no sirens, a controlled sting, not a spectacle. Blake stepped out of the SUV, hoodie up, hat low, playing the part one last time. He approached from the shadows along the fence line, cutting across towards the loading dock. The white van had already backed in. No plates. 2 masked men were inside, checking the manifest. One of them, the one in red gloves, was marking something on a tablet. Blake recognized it. Apex's internal app. They weren't just stealing bikes, they were erasing them digitally, before the paperwork caught up. Yo, Red Gloves called. Is this the last load, or are we still waiting on the RSV? We move it now, Ray snapped. I don't want to stay here past 10. Marston might be sniffing around again next week. HR said he canceled 2 exec meetings. Blake smirked. You're right, Ray. I'm sniffing around, and I smell your prison sentence. He stepped closer. Luis was pulling a tarp off a loaded trailer when he noticed movement. His head jerked up. Who the hell? He started, reaching for his belt. Blake moved fast, grabbing a tire iron from the wall and hurling it against the concrete with a deafening crash. The distraction worked. From the shadows, unmarked SUVs rolled in silently, headlights dead, doors flying open. Police! Hands in the air! Came the command from every direction. Chaos exploded. Nina dropped the clipboard and bolted, only to be tackled mid-sprint by 2 plainclothes officers. Ray turned, panicked, reaching into his pocket, but before he could pull anything, he was body-slammed to the pavement. Luis tried to hide behind the crates. Blake walked forward, his steps calm. The officers swarmed around him, but Detective Ortiz waved them off. Let him through, she ordered. Ray lay on the ground, face scraped, lips bloodied. Blake stood over him. You really thought I wouldn't notice, he said, voice low. That I built this empire just to let rats like you eat it from the inside? Ray laughed weakly, spitting blood. You're late. We already wiped half your stock. You'll never prove it. Oh, Blake said. We'll see. Ortiz stepped beside him, holding up a thumb drive sealed in an evidence bag. We intercepted your upload route 2 hours ago. Your app is synced to Apex's cloud servers. Every move you made is backed up, in triplicate. Ray's eyes widened. And Nina, Blake added, used her company email to register a fake warranty scam in my name. That's identity fraud, by the way. Multiple counts. He leaned closer. You didn't just steal bikes. You tried to erase me. Ortiz nodded to her team. Take them. Within minutes, cuffs were locked, evidence bags loaded, and the van was impounded. Blake stood in the middle of the lot as the wind picked up, blowing paper wrappers and dust across the blacktop. Sirens were still silent, but the flashing lights had begun. The illusion was shattered. The building that once shined like a cathedral of chrome and success was now a crime scene, one built with his name over the door. But Blake didn't flinch, because now he could start rebuilding. The next morning came like the calm after a wildfire, quiet, almost too quiet. Blake stood alone in his private office, the one he hadn't stepped foot in for nearly a month. The blinds were half open, the leather chair cold, and the dealership. Showroom outside looked almost surreal in its normalcy. To the staff arriving for the day, it was just another Friday. To Blake, it was the day after war. Stacks of reports sat on his desk. Statements from the police, digital forensic logs, Ortiz's, preliminary findings, and a thick folder labeled Internal Cleanup. At least 6 employees had already been terminated. Another 2 were under review. Luis, Nina, Ray, all in custody, facing federal charges. And thanks to the synced app backups and internal surveillance, the case was airtight. Still, Blake felt no satisfaction, only the heavy weight of betrayal. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he said. Detective Ortiz stepped inside, dressed in casual denim and a worn blazer, a folder tucked under her arm. "You look like someone who slept in a storm shelter." Blake gave a dry laugh. "Felt like it." She took a seat across from me. Him, sliding the folder onto his desk. "Figured you'd want to know. Interrogation started this morning. Ray cracked first, said the operation was bigger than Apex. Your dealership was just the tip of it. A distribution hub. Turns out the stolen bikes were being used to launder cartel cash." Blake's stomach turned. "Cartel? Golden Chain Syndicate." "They've been planting people in dealerships for 2 years. Ray and Nina were part of that. Luis, too. They used small-time scams to test waters, then escalated once they had digital access." Blake leaned back, silent. "And you, Mr. Marston," Ortiz added with a faint smile, "may have single-handedly helped us expose the largest motor vehicle laundering ring in the state." He didn't reply immediately. His eyes drifted toward the service bay through the glass. "The business almost died because I stopped looking at it like a machine," he muttered. "I got too comfortable. Assumed it would run on reputation." "Alone?" Ortiz nodded. "Machines break. People lie. That's why you get under the hood sometimes." He looked at her. "That's why I'm tearing this whole thing apart," he said. "We're revamping everything. Hiring, access control, tracking. I'm not losing another bolt to thieves who wear employee badges." Ortiz pulled out a smaller envelope. "You'll want this too." Inside was a printed transcript, part of Nina's phone records. One message stood out. "He won't know until Monday. By then, Apex is ours." Blake read it twice, then crumpled the page. "No one owns Apex but me," he said. Later that day, he gathered his remaining senior staff, the few he still trusted, in the conference room. Some were shaken, some ashamed they hadn't seen what was happening. All of them were loyal. "We got hit hard," Blake said, standing at the head of the table. "But we didn't fold. And from today forward, we don't just sell bikes. We protect the people who trust us." He passed around a binder labeled Phase 0 Rebuild Plan. It wasn't about damage control, it was a revolution. New hiring protocols, deep background checks, blockchain-powered inventory verification. Every bike would be logged, every transaction traceable, every movement tracked in real time. He would even partner with other dealerships to create a multi-dealer alert system for suspicious patterns. "Transparency is the new horsepower," he told them. "And loyalty, that's the real fuel." The weeks that followed were intense. Auditors swarmed the warehouse. Former customers called in, some angry, some curious. Blake took every call personally. He didn't hide. He apologized when necessary, explained when possible, and promised one thing to everyone. This would never happen again. By month's end, The story had broken. Headlines read, "Motorcycle mogul goes undercover, dismantles crime ring inside his own dealership." And below it, Blake's photo, not in a suit, but in his old leather jacket, standing beside a bike, smiling the kind of smile that only comes from surviving something meant to break you. Customers came back. Some just to shake his hand. Others to buy their dream bike, trusting the man who'd risked everything to defend the house he built. And every time Blake watched another bike roll out the showroom doors, engine roaring like a promise, he felt something deeper than pride. Peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because he'd finally remembered the reason he started all this. Not to chase profit, but to chase truth. The raw, unpolished kind. The kind you find when you're willing to get your hands dirty. Just like he used to.